Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my February wrap-up part 1. In this video, I will talk about the 7 works that I finished in the first half of February. Let's see what I thought about them at the time that I finished those books. Today is the 2nd of February and I finished my first work for the month of February. This is the ProCal Noelle of a Western romance with a hint of Christian romance series by Catherine Kennedy. The name of the novella was His Wagon Train Sweetheart, and the name of the series is Walton Valley. In this book, we follow the love story of a girl who leads the wagons with her father through places as an occupation, and her father is injured by the horses in the wagon. Father and daughter, as well as 2 brothers and Dr. Eli and his mother do stop there until the father's wounds are healed. During that time, the brothers and the father and the daughter decide to stay there and build a community there, which will be called Walton Valley, and the books in the series would take in this place. Of course, there is a romance between the doctor and the young woman. I received this book as an e-arc from Book Sirens in exchange for an honest review. The reason that I decided to download this novella was I really wanted to have a reading experience that is similar to my enjoyment of reading When Calls the Heart series by Janet Oak. And as a non-Christian reader, with the exception of maybe a single book in the series, themes of Christianity did not overwhelm me. And this novella actually met my expectations. I really liked the writing style. It was very easy to follow, and the setting of the series, I think, will be a place that I would like. The tone of Christianity was just the dose that I liked. The romance felt a bit fast-paced for me, but it was natural since it was a novella. I'm thinking the following books in that series would have a much more slow burn romance, which is the type of romance that I prefer in books. I gave this ProCal novella a 7 out of 10. I will try the following books in the Walton Valley series. Today is the 4th of February and I finished my second work today. I finished the book that I chose as the booktuber recommendation from Naomi at Naomi's bookshelf in January. This book was among her favorite non-fiction books that she read in 2021, which was Becoming by Michelle Obama. And in this book, Michelle Obama tells her life story from childhood until the day they left the White House to live a new chapter in their lives. The book is divided into 3 significant sections. One section follows the childhood and her young adult years before she met Barack Obama. And the second section covers the time period, the date that she starts a relationship with Barack Obama until he is chosen to be the 44th president of the United States. And the last section covers the time period that Michelle Obama spends as the first lady of the nation. If nothing, this book was very honest. I really did admire Obama as she tells her life story openly with all details, especially during the first and the second sections. In the third section, of course, she had to omit some of the critical details because of national security. But she was very honest in that section about her experiences being a first lady and being worldwide famous. After I finished the book, I thought Michelle Obama to be a very relatable person, although she went through experiences almost none of us would ever experience. As I mentioned before, she was honest in every aspect of her life. She admitted her strengths as well as her vulnerabilities, tragedies as well as her joys. There was a sentence in the very beginning of the book which I loved. She mentions that people do ask children what they want to do when they grow up, as if growing up is finite. And Obama mentions that we never stop growing up, we never stop learning from life. I really loved her way of thinking from the beginning of the book. Writing style was good, not very fancy, which actually made the book much more honest in reality. But some parts of the book could have been edited. Other than that, I agree with Naomi that this is a very, very good non-fiction book. And I gave Becoming by Michelle Obama an 8 out of 10. Today is the 5th of February and I finished this graphic novel of That on Nile. This is the Turkish edition. As you can see, it's very thin. I finished it only in an hour. I read this graphic novel for the Christie Fest. The chosen book is of course That on the Nile, and I read this book fairly new, and I have the graphic novel edition. I wanted to read the story in a different format and join in the discussion. This is a Hercule Poirot mystery. And Hercule Poirot goes to vacation to Egypt after solving a case. And in this tour, of course, murder happens. The newlywed, very rich woman is killed when she is sleeping. There is a very, very strong suspect among the passengers, who is the ex-lover of this rich woman's husband, the former best friend of the murdered woman, until Lynette Ridgway's murder. Jackie, her former best friend, as I mentioned before, keeps threatening the newlywed. But at the time that Lynette was murdered, she has a very, very strong alibi. So it is up to Hercule Poirot and an old friend, Colonel Race, to find out who actually killed Lynette Ridgway. When I read the book, I really did love the story, and I gave it 5 stars. The mystery is very cleverly constructed, and the characters are actually very fully fleshed. Even the minor characters are memorable. And I remembered the backstories of all of them when I read this graphic novel, even though the backstories of the minor characters are not given, of course, to condense the story. And I was wondering how they would make it short, actually. And I think they did a good job. The mystery was clear to understand, in my opinion, of course. But the drawing style, like the drawing style of Mystery of the Blue Train, although it was illustrated by somebody else, felt a bit too much angular for my taste. And the female characters were drawn like male characters, actually, and this again disturbed me a bit. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this wonderful mystery, and I gave this graphic novel an 8 out of 10. Today is the 7th of February and I finished 2 works back to back in 2 days. Yesterday I finished the audiobook that I started listening last month and then put it aside to read other books. The Genius of Jane Austen, Her Love of Theatre and Why She is a Hit in Hollywood by Paula Bryne. I also read this book for the yearly Golden Girls Reading Challenge. This month's prompt was to read a book by an author with my initials in it. My initials are BB, but I couldn't find a book that was on my TBR by an author with initials BB. So I decided to use the same initial of my last name with the author's last name, which was of course B. This non-fiction work is actually more serious than it looks. Most of the book is written very academically. I'm thinking that it was a revised version of an academic study. There are 3 sections in the book. The first section analyzes the theater in Jane Austen's lifetime. That section was very interesting at times because I had no idea that theater was so popular in the Regency period. And I actually took note of many titles from that period because I always like a good play. The second section, the influence of those plays on Jane Austen works were analyzed in very great detail. The work that was most analyzed was Mansfield Park, and there are, I think, 3 chapters that are devoted to that work. The last section analyzed the adaptations of Jane Austen works, and it was certainly written in later times, because the adaptations as current as 2017 are discussed in this section. When I was reading the book, I went between a rating of 6 out of 10 and 7 out of 10. The first part of the book, as I mentioned before, was very interesting for me. Although there were some parts which I thought were a bit more detailed than my taste, I kind of liked learning many new things and many new works of stage plays and authors that I had not heard of before. The second part was the part that I was most excited for, but maybe because I overhyped that part in my mind, the second part was the most disappointing part for me. Influence of theater was certainly seen in the works, but I felt the connection to be a bit forced in some parts. And the analysis sometimes consisted of lines from the stage play, comparing with the lines of the novel, so it was a bit boring in those parts. But although it was very short, the add-on section was very interesting for me. I learned the backstories and the initial reactions about the most of the adaptation that I know and love. I became aware of an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice stage play, which was written in the beginning of 20th century by A.A. Milne, the famous author who wrote Winnie the Pooh. The name of the play was Miss Elizabeth Bennet. I certainly plan to listen to that play in the very near future. Because of the big enjoyment that I got out of the last sections, I gave this non-fiction work a 7 out of 10. And today I finished the play Electra by Euripidies. This was the book that I chose from the best of 2021 video of Acopalyse Reading, the booktuber that I chose from the class. Actually, I chose this play because, as I said before, I really do love plays. Even though I'm not a big fan of tragedies in general, I wanted to see a Greek tragedy this time, the origin of the theater. I was aware of the story of Electra. I couldn't find a Turkish translation in my online library app, so I started reading an English translation. But most probably that translation was an older translation, and I actually understood nothing from the play. But then I found a more modern translation and started reading the play. The story of Electra is actually a very tragic story. Electra's father, Agamemnon, is killed by her mother with the help of her lover, and together they rule the country. Electra's brother is saved from killing by letting him flee to another Greek city, and Electra is forced to marry a poor peasant. The two siblings meet again, and together they form a plan to avenge their father's death. Sort of like the structure and the tone of the play, although it was tragic, there were some parts which were actually a bit humorous. And from research, I've heard that those parts were a parody of other tragedies. It was a pleasant surprise for me. But still, I find the over-emotional tone of tragedies a bit fake for my taste. So this play was a 7 out of 10 play for me. Today is the 11th of February and I finished Yüreğinin getirdiği yere git by Susanna Tamaro last night. This book was originally written in Italian and the English title of the book is Follow Your Heart. I actually have been eyeing to lend this book from the library for a while. I was a bit hesitant about whether I should check it out or not. And I saw a review video of Freddie as the Sluggish reader about this book. And his description of the book sounded very interesting. I will link his review video down below. And I saw this as a sign that I should lend this book from my library. This book tells the life story of a, I think 90-year-old woman telling her life story to her granddaughter in her letters. Her granddaughter is now in the United States, and the grandmother learns that she is dying, and she wants to say her goodbye and tell her story to her granddaughter by writing these letters, which would not be sent. I found the plot of this book very interesting, and I really like epistolary novels. Although it took a bit longer than I hoped that I would to get into the book. Once I get into the book, I read the book quite fast. The story got more and more interesting as we dug deeper into the grandmother's life. On the other hand, I have to admit I did not like the writing style very much. It consisted of many beautiful sentences, but sometimes I felt like the author was trying too hard to have a beautiful sentence rather than telling a story. I was very moved, especially towards the end. So I gave this book a 7 out of 10. Today is the 13th of February and I finished my audiobook of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. I had previously read this book many years ago, and when Krista at Books&Jams Patron Club chose this for the book of the month, I thought it was time for a reread. When I first read the book, I was very focused on finding out the mystery, and I was really shocked at the plot twist. I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to find out if Christie plotted the clues about the identity of the murderer or not. In this book, a very rich man called Roger Ackroyd is found murdered, and like in all of the Agatha Christie mysteries, many people have motives and means to murder this man. And we follow Dr. James Shepherd as he tells the events that happened before and after the murder, and also becomes sort of like an assistant to Hercule Poirot, who has decided to retire. But of course, murder happens wherever he is. When I first read the book, I gave this book 5 stars because I thought the plot twist was a brilliant idea considering the time that it was written. And I also thought that it was a very good written mystery. But upon a reread, I realized that this book can be the best mystery written by Agatha Christie. It's still not my favorite because I just love And Then There Were None. I think the structure, the writing, the tempo, the details are all perfect, are all on point, and I think not even a word is wasted and everything is related to the mystery. I was awed by how good a mystery this book is actually, even though I had read it before. Of course, there were clues planted all throughout the book, which points out to the identity of the murderer, but as Hercule Poirot pointed out in this book, even if I give all of the clues to you, I do not give the reasoning and the thought process that I used to solve the mystery. And that's exactly the point of view of Agatha Christie, especially in this book. As you all know, I love Agatha Christie and would have enjoyed almost anything that she has written. But rereading this book has really increased my respect for her as a mystery writer. And of course, I gave this book 10 out of 10. As for Turkish word of the day, since I finished 7 works in the first half of February, I thought 7 should be the word of the day. 7 means 7 in Turkish, and 7 is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.